know what? It's time we talked about love. In particular, we're going to talk about loving kindness. Now, I've just uploaded two meditation tracks from my meditation teacher, and they are on loving kindness skills practice. Now, I'm going to explain why those are up there and why that's useful for building better mental health. When we're struggling with mental illness, we become very skilled at feeling things that we don't like very much. I was very good at feeling angry, feeling anxious, feeling upset, feeling wronged, feeling lonely. I could feel those things constantly. I was very good at feeling depressed. I was very good at feeling all of these things that really I didn't actually want to spend all of my time feeling. For example, if I was out walking on the street and some car almost cut me off or ran a red light or something like that, I would spend the rest of the day upset, thinking about all the things I wanted to say to that driver that they could have hurt me. And even in my head, I would start to think about, well, what if they had hit me? And I would actually feel like the car had run me over, and I would imagine myself like, pulling the driver out of the car because they would stop because they had just run over me. All of these things that would happen, I would just get more and more upset. I would convince myself that the things that actually happened were far worse than what had actually happened. I would just spend all day thinking about the things that I was going to tell that person because of what they should have done. Or I could spend all day thinking about how I might have said something wrong. I might have said something that would have offended somebody. So I would spend the rest of the day thinking of what I should have said, having the conversation over and over again in my mind, like really believing that conversation, not being present at all to what's going on around me, completely being stuck back in that moment in the past when I was having that conversation. I would get more and more convinced that I had really done something terrible, that person was really upset. The more I would think about whatever had happened, I would think of more totally reasonable evidence to prove that I had done this horrible thing. So I would get more and more anxious. I would spend more and more time trying to think of all the different ways that I could try to make up for this thing I imagined I had done. And I would feel terrible. And I could feel terrible for hours. I could be anxious for hours and just ruminating and engaging in compulsions and having that feeling. I was very, very skilled at feeling anxious. I was very skilled at feeling upset. I had a lot of endurance to handle those emotions. I could handle them all day, often many days in a row. I was not skilled at feeling other emotions, like happiness, kindness, compassion. I was not compassionate with myself or anybody else. If I felt something like love, I might feel it briefly. I might feel some happiness briefly, and then immediately I would jump in and be like, oh my God, well, what if this feeling goes away? What if something happens to ruin it? I only was able to interact with feelings like love and happiness through the lens of things like anxiety. I would only hold on to something like happiness very, very briefly. I had no endurance for holding on to something like happiness. No endurance for expressing love, whether it's for myself or somebody else. These are skills. We get better at handling the emotions we practice handling the most. The more we handle a particular emotion, the more comfortable we get with handling that emotion, with using that emotion. Even if we dislike that emotion, even if we hate it, we get hooked on the experience of feeling that emotion and hating it. If you want to explore that more, check out the video on Stockholm Syndrome. So after years of practicing emotions that we don't like and getting really good at feeling those for incredibly long periods of time, becoming Olympic athletes in feeling anxious, it can help to start to practice feeling those emotions that we've neglected. And so often that means things like love and kindness. Practicing emotions like love doesn't mean we're trying to get rid of those other feelings because they're bad. And that's a huge part of the struggle with mental illness. So no, I'm feeling something and I want to get rid of it. And like I was just talking about with Stockholm Syndrome, we get hooked on that feeling that thing we dislike and then trying to solve it and trying to get rid of that. So this isn't about developing new compulsions to try to get rid of feelings. It's really about expanding your emotional abilities, expanding your emotional endurance, and actually creating space to feel things like love and kindness. That after years of making a lot of space for anxiety and worry and hatred and fear and so on, we're just always stuck over on that side because that's the easy thing to do. Whatever we're feeling is what we're feeling. And that's okay. We can be mindful of whatever we're feeling and do healthy things aligned with our values. It's important to be able to learn that. It's important to be able to learn how to feel what you're feeling while making healthy decisions, while not judging those feelings. You can feel whatever you're feeling. If you've noticed that, feeling things like love and kindness and happiness just don't seem to happen very much, it can help to start to create space for that and to start to build the skills to have those feelings. It is very difficult, maybe impossible, to feel things that we don't have the skills to feel, that we don't have the emotional intelligence and the emotional awareness to feel, to understand what it's like to have those feelings while we're living our life. Those are skills. They're things we have to practice, and at first that practice is extremely difficult because we've probably spent many years, I know for me, I'd spent so many years not practicing things like love that I couldn't. If I tried to feel that I just didn't have the ability to do that. It was impossible. So learning a type of meditation, often called meta meditation or loving kindness meditation, was extremely useful for me because it gave me that opportunity to practice a skill, feeling love and feeling kindness, a skill that I didn't have and hadn't practiced before. So I really didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what to do with it or how to use it or what that experience was like. Because my first reaction when experiencing something that I didn't like was to fall back on compulsion. So learning how to experience love and kindness was very useful. It was particularly useful with learning how to experience love and kindness with myself. Quite often when we're struggling with mental illness, we don't think we deserve love. We don't think we deserve kindness. We can think of all sorts of reasons, all sorts of things that have happened in the past where we shouldn't be loved. A great part of loving kindness meditation is actually bringing up those past experiences, those past memories, and learning how to feel love and learning how to feel kindness towards yourself, which is something I know I had never done. I had just decided, those things I did were terrible, that person was terrible, he doesn't deserve this, he shouldn't have that. And that was something I carried into so many different experiences in my life. Those were also judgments that I extended to other people. They did that, they don't deserve this, they shouldn't get that. And that wasn't a very effective way to live. When I'm working with clients, loving kindness meditation comes up as a great way to practice that skill of expressing love and kindness to ourselves. So often something that person hasn't been doing, so I would always bring up this tool. Hey, this is a great way to practice this. But I quickly noticed that doing a loving kindness meditation, which can often be 30, 45 minutes, and for a lot of that, you're feeling love towards yourself. Particularly yourself in the past, usually yourself when you can think of all sorts of reasons why you don't deserve love. That was so difficult. Everybody struggled with it. And then that really got me thinking that, hey, yeah, this was the most difficult thing for me too. I really struggled with that. It was so difficult at first to bring up a feeling of love and hold on to it. It was so different, so fundamentally different from my ability to bring up a feeling of anxiety or a feeling of hatred. I could just have that there and feel it for hours. Love would kind of come up, it would be really, really difficult to hold on to it, and then it would be gone, like a couple seconds later. With that in mind, I went and I spoke with my meditation teacher, Ronit, and asked her, because she does a great job of doing loving kindness meditation. I always love going to her meditation workshops. When she does loving kindness meditation, she does it very, very effectively. And I explained to her this challenge that, the full loving kindness meditation is fantastic, but how do we break it down into steps, into skills? Because again, this is a skill, it's a practice, it's just like any exercise, right? This is about mental fitness. And you can't just go out and say, run for 45 minutes if you've never run before. You don't have the endurance. And that's what it's like to go and do a loving kindness meditation for 45 minutes if you've never felt love for anybody, especially yourself. It takes practice. It takes learning how to do that. And so with that in mind, Renita's created 2 loving kindness skills practice meditation audio tracks that you can find. They should be on the screen right now. They're also in my channel. Check them out. They are a great way to get an introduction to starting to have that feeling, and just an introduction to starting to have the practice of feeling love and the practice of feeling kindness. Being able to take that feeling and express it to somebody else or to yourself. And especially yourself, I think you'll find it's very tough at first to feel love for yourself. That is an incredibly useful skill. So much of recovery is about learning how to trust yourself. And if you don't love yourself, it's going to be very, very difficult to also practice trusting yourself. If it's difficult at first, that is great. The more you practice, the easier it'll get. The easier it'll be for your brain to default to that feeling, to be able to feel that in situations where you didn't think it was possible, to be able to express that to people that you didn't think it was possible, especially yourself.